Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
We're starting with the Telegraph, and this is a preview to Boris Johnson's speech. We're hearing beforehand that it's going to be quite momentous in its subject matter in terms of Brexit. Quite dramatic.
Crikey. I mean, I don't know what they could do to make it less dramatic. I mean, just by virtue of what he's saying here, this is the same thing Boris has been saying for months and months and months. I can't see any... We're looking through as much of the previews that have been put out for the last couple of days, trying to find something new in there. I can't see anything new in there at all. I mean, there's this sort of attitude that's being sort of, he says this to the Prime Minister or he warns the Prime Minister. However, this has all been organised with Downing Street. I mean, as we understand it, this speech has had a couple of, vetoes by number 10, at which point it goes back to him. But this is part of a structure which is essentially the lead-up to Downing Street deciding that it may or may not tell us what on earth its Brexit policy actually is, supposedly in 3 weeks' time. So there'll be 5 speeches by Cabinet Secretaries, and this is part of it. This is being done in line with Downing Street, and yet I just see nothing in there that Boris hasn't said before many, many times. So I'm at a loss as to see what on earth any of us are benefiting from this taking place.
Yes, I share the perplexity, but if it is the case that it is a kind of corporate event cooked up, not against Mrs May, but with Mrs May, then maybe the thinking is that there's a lot of unrest around the Brexit negotiations, and a lot of people have got the idea that possibly Mrs May is not entirely sure of what she's doing and possibly not in control of everything and possibly going to kind of sell Brexit down the river, and we have to scotch that. So maybe the thinking is put Boris out there with all Boris's authority because he's Boris, because he's known to be a Brexiteer, to say, these are the red lines and here we stand, except that there's a few flaws in this. First of all, Boris is not exactly what I would call a strong Brexiteer. He's a bit flaky. Secondly, with Boris, there's always a personal agenda. And his personal agenda is, I want to be Prime Minister.
Yes. Is he towing the party line or Theresa May's line, or is he vying for her position in terms of, you said in the language he's warning her? Is he just, again, putting himself up as opposition to the Prime Minister?
All he ever... Look, there is no principle to the way that he behaves. There is no conviction to how he behaves. He is just a rolling machine of self-interest. And at every given moment, you're totally right, all he's thinking of is, I want to get into Downing Street, and that is the only thing there. He could just as easily have been a Remainer or a soft Brexiter. I mean, any outcome would have been absolutely fine by him. He's one of the least principled people in Cabinet, and that is really saying something. What's remarkable, I find, about this speech is we keep on being told he's going to make the Liberal case for Brexit and try to get Remainers on side. There's a lot of talk of, we're going to put aside the old labels of Leave and Remain. Again, I'm looking through the previews, I look and I look and I look, and I think, where is the offer? Where is the offer to Remainers in all of this? Now, I know, obviously, we're coming from different perspectives on this, but just as a basic idea of how do you get people on side, you have to make some kind of offer to them, and I look and I look and I look and I just cannot see it.
But it may be, if this is in concert with Mrs May, it may be that the thinking is that the danger to Mrs May comes not from Remainers but from Brexiteers. The Brexiteers have the power to bring her down because they can just withdraw love and that's it, it's over. And it's those people that she's got worried about, because it's those people that she feels she has lost. And she has. There's no question. But that they have lost patience with her. They thought that they were, that although she had been a Remainer, she was very tepid as a Remainer, and that she had, she had a sense of duty and would do her duty by the electorate, and so it would be all right on the night. And then something changed in the last few weeks, and their patience snapped, and they thought, actually, she's going to sell us down the river. Now, she's picked that up, and she knows that they can do her enormous damage.
Do you think that's right, that it's the enemy within, if you like, that she has to fear?
Her biggest threat, by some distance, is the people around the Cabinet table who are the hard Brexiters. I think that analysis is correct, absolutely. What's funny is there's an almost sort of Shakespearean poetry to the whole thing, because at the beginning she was managing to balance the Brexit issue by being incredibly mercurial. I mean, if you remember, for months all we had was Brexit means Brexit, which is this tautological nonsense that she just spewed out every day. And by virtue of that, everyone didn't get rid of her because they feared that it might help the other side.
That's right.
Now, the exact opposite has happened, which is that Remainers have obviously lost patience with her and had done some time ago. And now the hard Brexit right are also losing patience with her. And she finds herself in a precarious position. However, just by virtue of the people that are making these speeches over the next few weeks, tells us quite a bit about where she's going to end up. Philip Hammond is not making a speech. Amber Rudd is not making a speech. The people that are making speeches are mostly hard Brexiters, apart from Lidlington at the Cabinet Office. And by virtue of that, and just the general way in which she conducts herself on this issue, I think it is quite unlikely that she's going to come out in 3 weeks' time and saying, we're going to embrace the EU very, very strongly.
Well, yes, but you don't know where she's going to end up. What we can reasonably assume, and what we're doing, is what is the game she's playing now, which is all about survival and all the rest of it.
Right.
But we don't know from that where this country is going to end up in the few months' time. We just don't know.
That's a fair point, because typically speaking, to protect herself internally, she backs down to the hard Brexiters. Then she goes to the negotiation in Brussels, and they say, I thought you want an open border in Ireland. If you want an open border in Ireland, you have to stay in a customs union. That is just a point of objective fact. So then she realises what the consequences are of the hard Brexit policy and decides she's suddenly going to follow a soft Brexit policy, goes back to Parliament, gets spooked by the hard Brexiters again, and like a ball bouncing around the court one way or the other, just goes in the opposite direction of whatever the problem is.
And very quickly, as we round up this Brexit section, do you think she can survive?
She can. I think it's growing increasingly unlikely.
Melanie?
Well, she can. It depends whether her enemies and opponents in her own party take the view that what would come after her is too intolerable. That's what's been keeping her in power. And that is a finely calibrated judgment which could easily change.
Right, that concludes our Brexit section. Let's move on to the Telegraph and Boris Johnson. Billed as potentially a dramatic speech tomorrow on Brexit. But you're not so sure that he's going to say anything different?
No, it's just the same old boring old guff. So it was also supposed to be this moment, by the way, he was supposed to offer this olive branch to Remainers, and I keep on waiting to see what the olive branch entails. He mentions at one point here, he says, I want to try to anatomise at least some of the fears that Remainers, like myself, have, and show to the best of my ability that they're unfounded and the opposite is usually true. And then just proceeds to do the same old thing about you're thwarting the will of the people, we can't accept any EU regulations, we can't accept any EU laws, it's got to be the hardest possible interpretation of the vote. And this is his consensual approach to reaching out to the other side. I think, like, well, my gosh, man, if this is the consensual approach, I'd really hate to see it when you're being aggressive. So, you know, this is just the exact same message he's been giving for 18 months. Out it comes again. The idea that we treat this as some kind of new development is a complete bafflement to me, unless there's something in that speech that hasn't been trailed to the press. But seeing as it's been trailed to the press for 48 hours, one can't imagine what else there really is in there that we haven't seen already.
Melanie, you're laughing.
We don't know. I mean, you know, it's always unwise to, you know, to assume that the morsels we have deliberately been fed tonight, so that you and I can pore over it. That is the full story. But it seems to me that. This idea that, you know, he was possibly extending an olive branch to Remainers like yourself seems to me wide of the mark anyway, because what he's obviously doing is reaching out to the Brexiteers. It's the Brexiteers that Mrs May fears. The Brexiteers within her cabinet and within her party can bring her down. And, you know, they formed the view in the last few weeks that Mrs May, upon whom they were relying, even though she was a Remainer, to do her duty by the British electorate and deliver proper Brexit, they kind of suddenly lost faith in this. And she knew they lost faith in it, and therefore she has to reassure them. So this is why Boris, it seems to me, is saying, you know, there's no way that we're going, these are my red lines, there's no way that we can have Brexit with, you know, while remaining under the ambit of the European laws and all the rest of it. As you say, it's not exactly new stuff, but he's saying it to kind of reassure Brexiteers. Does it reassure a Brexiteer like me? Absolutely not. I don't trust the man with my teaspoons, let alone with the future of the country.
We are both magnificently unreassured by this.
Are they silver teaspoons? Staying with Brexiteers, there's a piece here in the Times, Brexiteer artists come out of the closet. Were they in the closet?
Yes, I find this story quite cute, which is basically 4%. The sum total of Leave supporters in the creative industries stands at 4%, which makes sense. I mean, generally when you speak to musicians or artists or stand-up comics or writers, these are not the kind of people that support Brexit. They typically think of themselves as quite international people who are against borders, who want people and ideas and goods to flow freely. It's the kind of people that you get. So I find it almost sweet that a pub night has been set up for the tiny group of Leaver artists who, there's pictures of them. Well, they have sketches of themselves meeting up in the pub, and they generally feel that, you know, they're stigmatised by their colleagues, as, you know, I presume that they actually are. And even I, as a veteran Remainer, actually find their weird little creative holdout Brexit group kind of sweet.
We don't know the numbers.
That's very nice of you.
How many?
Ian.
How many?
I'm genuinely quite
kind-hearted. I speak as a member of
yeah.
this persecuted minority, and I feel very sympathetic towards these people, and I feel that they are expressing in creativity my own feelings.
I didn't know that you did creative endeavours.
Melanie's included in that little drawing there. She's one of the
Yes,
around there.
right in the front. Yep.
I've been